Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Jenny Sauer. I'm a member of the End User Tools Group, and I'm here to welcome you to this morning, the Spongy Moth and Flighted Spongy Moth Complex trapping data collection using the application ArcGIS Field Maps. If for any of you here, hopefully nobody's in the kind of group that's like, what is this? This is a pest that was formerly referred to as Gypsy Moth. We're not referring to it that way anymore, and I'm going to do my best to use these this new naming convention. So Spongy Moth and Flighted Spongy Moth Complex together today. Here we go. So to start with, I'm going to put a couple of links in the chat, and please remind me later in this training to put them in there again. I know as people join our meeting or our training here today, they won't see our chat from earlier before they joined. So sometimes then they're a little confused later. So I just want to make sure that these things make it. And also this is two apps, one training. So it's kind of an intense one, but for those of you who are joining, I see lots of familiar faces from last year. So hopefully you can help each other out. It's not that difficult and it hasn't changed very much from last year. Okay, the two links I put in the chat. The first one is this mobile data collection tools website, and this is the public-facing APHIS website, so available to state cooperators as well as really anyone publicly. This top section has documentation that will help you. For instance, under the general training documents, you'll find information. There's a user guide on the ArcGIS Field Maps application. This first little link here to training events might have been how you found this training here today, because you can see if I scroll down, I've got Spongy Moth and Flighted Spongy Moth Complex, and we're here today on March 2nd, but there are two more offerings. These will be as identical as I can make them to today, but another opportunity for you to learn about this data collection on April 11th and May 16th. So if you click this link, you can go ahead and register and return again. I'm always happy to see you once more. Moving back to that main page, the PEST program specific training documents, I would urge you to check out as well. There are documents both for, it's in alphabetical order, so we've got Spongy Moth down here and Flighted Spongy Moth Complex here. There is for both of these a user manual and a quick reference. And the user manual, I do want to point out something later, so I'm going to open it here and I hope I remember to come back to it. But it opens right there for you. You can download it or print it if you need, but this is a really dynamic document, so make sure that you are aware of all the documents here that will help you. And then moving back one last time, you may have noticed that we are recording this training. That training will show up here in the bottom half of our main web page under the video gallery, and it will be categorized under PEST programs. So you can go ahead and just click PEST programs and get this year's trainings. This is what's happened so far this year. You can search here in the search box for Spongy Moth training, and it will show up actually right here at the beginning, since it will be the more recent one coming in. Give me, about a week to get that up. I have to process it and open some tickets and get it hosted here, but give me about a week and it will show up here. And so that will be there for you if, once you get started, if you want to just refer back, maybe I went too fast and you missed a point, you want to watch it again. And also for colleagues that maybe couldn't make it here today. So that training will sit here in the video gallery for you whenever you need it. Again, give me a week to get that, at least to get that up. And then the second link that I placed in there is this training quiz. And the Spongy Moth and Flighted Spongy Moth Complex, sorry, that got me for a second. They're being quizzed together. We're training together, both of those. They're separate maps, but the questions really apply to both, and there's a couple nuances there that we'll go over. You don't have to take this quiz, and there's no pressure. It's not meant to give you worry or anxiety. It's really just to kind of test your knowledge along the way, and this helps kind of put those things in there for you. Kind of sink it into your brain just one other way. It also will give you I've been playing around a little bit here. I can see with my keyboard. Sorry, it's like a child. This third question on your email address, you'll need to type in your email address carefully because there is an automation set on this question. And once you've submitted your quiz, it will automatically email you with an email that says, congratulations, you've completed this training. So it gives you a little credit for having completed it. If you want to submit that to your supervisor, there are some supervisors I know that like to see these things because that shows them you did attend the training. Not only did you attend, but you got something out of it. You were able to complete this quiz. There's not a lot of pressure to do that, but I personally like keeping those kinds of things in a little file folder and bringing it to my manager's attention every quarter. Look at how many trainings I've done, and this is what I know how to do. So that's up to you. From my side, it really helps me kind of measure whether my training points that I really want to get across are getting across. So it helps me to kind of know where I'm landing with these kinds of trainings. So so make sure that you, if you want to, open it up. Take the quiz right along with me as we're talking, but definitely make use of this tool to kind of test your knowledge. Two maps in one. So as I mentioned, these are two separate maps or apps. And since so many of you switch between these two, it makes sense that we'll look at them both together. I'm going to place a poll up here for you all. And I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment and answer the question. It's asking what mobile device you plan to use to collect data on the Spongy Moth and Flighted Spongy Moth complex. And the idea there is I'd like to make sure that I'm showing you what you need. I'm seeing kind of a 50-50 split between iPad and iPhone. And then there are some of you not sure, and that's okay at this point. You'll become sure, I think, pretty soon. So that's great. Thank you for doing that. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I show you how to do these things on the iPad, which is a nice bigger view for the camera, but I'm going to take some time to show you on the iPhone what it looks like as well then. And it looks like it's shaking out to be maybe one more person on iPhone than iPad. So if I don't, please anyone speak up and remind me, but I'm going to make sure that I show you what that looks like on the iPhone too then. Thank you for doing that. So as I mentioned, this is the much anticipated Spongy Moth and Flighted Spongy Moth Complex Trapping 2023 map. These are refreshed from last year. Last year, we also used the ArcGIS Field Maps application. So it's not brand new to many of you. If it is, you do want to make sure you have that mobile device, that you are comfortable with field maps, and your survey protocol person would be Anthony Man-Son-Hing. He is your National Operations Manager. And just to give you a visual of what we're trying for here today, that's you climbing the stairs. Maybe you don't look like a gentleman in a suit. Maybe you're a little more rough and ready in the field and ready to get out there and do some trapping. But all the way at the top, we've got a trophy, and that's what we're going for today, if possible. But that requires some of these steps to have already been completed. And some of those steps we've just kind of referred to. We expect some foundational training, and you should understand survey protocol pretty well. That's not something I can teach you. That's your National Operations Manager's responsibility. You want to feel pretty comfortable with the device you're using, whether that's an iPad or iPhone, or if you're not sure, you want to get there where you have a device you feel comfortable using. And the mobile app itself, ArcGIS Field Maps, you'll want to be sure that you feel really comfortable using that application. And as I mentioned, that ArcGIS Field Maps has a user guide there for you. There is also a 10 video series, 10 short videos that you can self-pace train yourself through. And so you want to make sure you have that comfortability as well. And then the last little step at the top there with the gears, that will be what we talk about today. Just making sure that you understand how to use the application as it was designed to collect data for Spongy Moth and Flighted Spongy Moth Complex. Just to give you a quick little funny picture, we've got a pathway here, and the pathway is pretty clear. It goes all the way around the outside of this kind of circular way. And then there's this little like way through the woods here, this little opening through the trees. And you can see that there's a path that's been worn in the grass there. And that's just people walking that way instead and kind of wearing a path. And I've recently discovered, you might know about these kinds of things when you look on a hillside or something where the animals have worn a pathway and then other animals just keep going that way. That's the easier way to them then. For humans, when we do this, it's called a desire path. So the desire is to get there. And the quickest way to meet that desire is just to go right through the grass, right? And so I thought this was a good way to kind of explain to you that this is something we don't want here today, and just kind of beg you to humor me on the idea of staying on the path. And what I'm referring to specifically really seems to apply more to you iPhone users than iPads, but applies to both. And what I'm talking about is using this application while disconnected from Wi-Fi and following that workflow of downloading an offline map, collecting data to that map, and then syncing that data back up. It's really tempting when you're using an iPhone, because you have a cellular data plan typically, to just allow that plan to do its thing and work well connected or live in a live map. And there's some dangers there and some reasons why. Well, I'll get into that later, but I thought I'd share this picture and just say from the start, please, let's put an X through the desire path, and just stick with me on that just for this training. Use that mentality that we're going to try to stay on the path, even if you're tempted to go a different way. So what we'll talk about today, we've got some objectives here lined up, and I always try to cover this in all of our trainings, but we're going to talk a little bit about that Field Maps application, especially specific to signing in, what that looks like, because that can be tricky. We also have 2 maps for each application. One is provided as a training version, and we're going to talk about how signing into those is really important. We're going to overview what I've referred to already, that disconnected workflow that I'm saying is so important. Let's look at what that is and just get an overview of that. We're going to look at the layers that are involved that you are allowed to edit in the mobile apps and what those data forms look like. As I said, I'll show you on the iPad first. It's a bigger view for you to hopefully be able to see me enter some data. We'll do that together. And then I will pull my iPhone in and let you see what that looks like. Hopefully by that point, we've gone over some things already that I can just resolve as reminders at the end. Just some things to be especially careful of and pay special attention to. So ArcGIS Field Maps. As I said, you do want to be pretty familiar with this, and there is internal training support available. There are 10 self-paced videos. You should have completed them at some point. If you haven't, please just do that, watch them through. They're a little over an hour in total, and you can watch them little by little, 5 minutes or 8 minutes at a time. Just make sure you feel really comfortable and confident. And even if you used Field Maps last year, I really would recommend reviewing that video list. So just check in and make sure that you are using it in a way that makes sense and that is as appropriate and makes you feel good about using it. And as a reminder, all of that information is on the Mobile Data Collection Tools webpage, available to you, hopefully pretty easy. So when you first tap that button or the icon to open ArcGIS Field Maps, you're presented with a screen that looks pretty much like this. You'll have the option to sign in with ArcGIS Online, sign in with ArcGIS Enterprise, or skip the sign in entirely. And here in the government, we have federally secured this enterprise site, so we will always choose to protect our data in signing into the ArcGIS Enterprise. So we're always going to tap that, and there it is in red for you. And once you've done that, you kind of get a little menu like this. The first time you tap this sign in with ArcGIS Enterprise, you'll only have these 2 bottom options: specify a new URL and scan code. And we're going to pick specify a new URL, and the keyboard will open up and we'll carefully manually type that URL in. And as you can see, there is a URL right above it. And so this is what happens once you've done that and go to sign in again. It does save that URL. In fact, it'll save multiple up above. And in this case, then when I tap sign in with ArcGIS Enterprise, now I can just go ahead and tap that existing URL. I don't have to type it in again, which is kind of nice. So Field Maps does try to help you out with future sign-ins, but that first time you want to be really careful that you've got this correctly. I talked a little bit about us having two maps, and I want to explain that a little bit, how you get to those two maps. I'm going to try to get these meeting controls out of the way. They're bothering us. There we go. So as I said, the End User Tools group creates a map, and there's one each for Spongy Moth and Flighted Spongy Moth Complex, so two separate apps that you sign into or locate. And those are both located in the official data collection portal. We call it a production portal, and that's that one on top here. And then we also create a training version. It's a complete copy, but only for practice and for play. And that is hosted in our staging portal. And I'm just going to give you a couple of little red boxes here to help you see the difference. So on sign in, you would want to enter these URLs to find these maps. And the point is that we want you to be able to practice and play with data and feel comfortable before you go and enter official data. It could also be useful for training. And for instance, today I'll be using the training version in the staging portal to show you some practice stuff. It's all fake data, it's not real, and that's where it belongs. And this is a question, one of the questions in your quiz. So if you want, here's a freebie. Number one, you want to make sure that official data being collected for Spongy Moth or Flighted Spongy Moth Complex is going in that official data collection site. So you'll sign in to maps.mrp, etc., and you'll open that map and go ahead and enter data. Conversely, you want to make sure play data or training data is going into the training map. There's a couple ways you can tell that you're in a training map. First of all, if you're unsure, when in doubt, sign out. That's the rule. If you're not sure where you are, which one you signed into, sign out, sign in again, and make sure that you're in the right spot. But training maps have in their title, right at the beginning in all capitals, the word training. So that helps a ton. Also, the little background or base map in training maps is this dull light gray combo, where the official map is kind of this brilliant imagery. So I will make sure to show you that. I have my iPad where we will practice entering data is signed into the stage portal, and my iPhone has the official data site, the MRP maps.mrp site, our official production map up. So I can show you the difference hopefully in a little bit, but just be very careful where you're entering data. The disconnected mode workflow. We're hitting this a lot, and it's important. I remember I want you to resist the desire to deviate from that main path, stay on the path. And the point is that it does take a little bit of preparation. In the office or well connected to a reliable Wi-Fi, you would download an area of interest, an offline map area, to your device, and then that device can be disconnected. Now I added a little bullet point here at the bottom, parking lot tests. And what I mean by that is when you walk away from that Wi-Fi and you disconnect, just make sure, open that up, make sure it's working as you expected. And then you can feel confident going out into the field, enter data all day, what have you. And once you are able to return to connect to a reliable Wi-Fi, then you can synchronize that data. And I put another bullet point here, probably when you would charge your device overnight again. So the really important key factor here is ArcGIS Field Maps was specifically designed to operate well disconnected from Wi-Fi. That's the point of the app being a field data collection application. It is meant, and it assumes that Wi-Fi might be difficult out in the field. And so for you iPhone users, and really iPad, it happens too. Don't mean to pick on you iPhone users, but having a cellular data plan does make it seem as if you might just leave it be and collect data live. Some of the caveats there are you may assume a Wi-Fi connection that is stable, and as you're moving around, even between buildings in an urban area, you might lose that connection. So there's that. The servers themselves are being heavily pinged if you're operating live. Every movement, every adjustment to the map is going back and forth and pinging that connection back to our online map, and that server is getting overly stressed. So if everyone's doing that, that's a lot on a server. Thirdly, occasionally our servers go down for a short amount of time or have an issue or a bug that is being resolved. And if you are operating in an offline map, you can do that pretty much oblivious to any issues during the day while you're out there collecting data. It does not affect your workflow. Whereas if you were connected, you would have to pause work. So it helps with uninterrupted workflow to remain disconnected. You might have to wait to sync a little bit. Maybe that is still down, but your data flow can continue to come into your device, and then you go back and sync. So the really important part is in this red box. I'm going to give it a little spin. That's the important part to setting yourself up to success. And also this sync is really important. And with Spongy Moth and Flighted Spongy Moth Complex, there is a new feature, which I'll get into imminently, which really would be very helpful to you to sync in the morning before you left and in the evening when you come back. And the reason why is the synchronization is a two-way street. So it both pulls in new information to your offline map and pushes out data that you've collected to your offline map up to that online map. So it's a two-way street. Okay, so what does it do when it's bringing things in? Well, so just to hint at it a little, there are GIS nightly scripts, and there's also a new map notes layer. So let's dive in a little bit into what those layers look like. These are screenshots from my iPad from both of these applications. They're a little fuzzy as screenshots, but we'll look at that in a minute from the iPad. These are the layers on either of these maps. And you can see Spongy Moth has one active layer, the Trap Sites 2023 layer, and you know that that's enabled because it's toggled to blue, and this is how they're defaulted to come in. And there's also a map notes points layer, which can be enabled and used. And then there is a trap sites from last year, 2022. So the two that are editable are the trap sites for this year, 2023, and the map notes points layer. This 2022 is here for your reference. Same thing for Flighted Spongy Moth Complex, same layers. There is a Trap Sites 2023. These layers are editable and also have an associated activities table. And the map notes points layer is also editable, and the reference layer for last year. There's also a layer on the device called the markup layer, and this layer is just a feature of field maps. The application itself adds this layer to every map, and it really literally just lets you mark up a map. We don't recommend it necessarily. There's a couple things to be concerned with. Number one, it is not an official data collection layer, so you don't want to use a markup layer and add things that should be in our official layer. For instance, the trap sites layers or the map notes points layers, and it lives on your device. It's difficult to share out, whereas your map notes points is shared among everyone, all users of this map. So just be careful if you do tend to use this markup layer, be sure that you're in alignment with your supervisor in using it. It's not something that we recommend since it's not official. A couple of things here to note. The map notes points is a layer that allows you to record hazards or information. And it is, as I said, shared among all. So be careful that what you're sharing is okay to be shared among all, but it might record things like a dog or maybe even something like a good lunch spot or maybe a hazard that might impede the trap being placed there. It's really up to you and survey protocol and your supervisor what gets added there. Just remember that it's shareable across all. And then the other thing that's happening with Gypsy Moth is the symbology on the map. The symbol for that trap site is being updated nightly by a GIS script. And they're a little bit different. So Spongy Moth doesn't have a required update time frame. It will update the symbology to inactive if the activity was a remove activity. For flighted Spongy Moth complex, it is getting an additional update nightly, where every 14 days that trap site will be updated to say due instead of current. So both come in originally as current. Spongy Moth remains until it's removed, and then it updates to inactive. Flighted Spongy Moth complex every 14 days, or after 14 days, I should say, gets updated to a symbol that says due, and also responds to a removal activity with an dated version of inactive. I'll show you what that looks like too, so don't worry too much about that right now. I'll show you what that looks like and what I mean. But first I want to talk through just a trapping workflow as it is recorded. So as far as this data form goes, the first visit to a site is placing that trap. That places a point on the map, and that map point is symbolized as current to start with. That first data form also has a field that says install date. So it's inferring that that trap was placed. It's been installed. That's the first activity, is installed. And then all future visits are activities that are related to that trap site on the map. So all future visits, replacing lure, monitoring, removals, any of those activities are recorded as activities on that site. For those of you who've been doing this, it's nothing new, but just want to make sure that that kind of workflow is in our head as we look at the data form. And there is one kind of workflow that sometimes gets us a little confused. I know if we think about it a little bit, it's not that hard, but if we have to relocate a trap for any reason, let's say it's no longer a viable spot, there is no tree there and it fell over, or it's become flooded, or for whatever, any reason at all, the original spot, you'll need to record an activity, a final activity, a remove trap activity. And then you would go, walking with that trap, if you're going to reuse it, to the new location, and then start with that place a trap. Now, lots of questions kind of come in, and maybe less now, but I'm just going to hit it anyway. When you enter a remove trap, some folks think that symbol on the map should disappear. And no, that's not right. It should remain. And in fact, it's very important to data capture that that site on the map remains, with the whole history of that trap recorded and retained, and the last activity being remove. Now, I've already told you that once that remove activity has been recorded, that nightly script hits, and so the next day you'll see that the symbol will change to inactive, and so that should help you see that happen. But you should still see that site on your map. So just know that your last activity should be remove, and that's what that script will use to update what that symbol looks like on the map. All right, so we've talked a lot about what it maybe might look like. Let's look at it. And I'm going to start with Spongy Moth and look at the trap sites layer, and let's just walk through what it looks like a little bit. Again, this is my PPQ iPad, and I'm going to open Field Maps. And Field Maps does try to help you out. It's jumped right through hoops of signing me in and all the way into the last map I was looking at. So I'm going to go back twice to my main maps menu. And remember, again, we want to be sure we're playing around here today. We're not entering official data. I want to make sure I'm in a training or the stage portal. I know that I signed into the stage portal, but if I needed to sign out, I could go to my profile menu, slide on up, and sign out. Now, another way that I know that I am, besides knowing that I did this earlier, is I'm seeing training in titles all over the place. So training in the thumbnail photograph and in the title itself. And so I want to find Spongy Moth. I could scroll down, or I could just go ahead and start typing in the search. And Spongy Moth is spelled out for us this year just to help us find it. And then in parentheses is the abbreviated version. And I have both of these maps here, and I have offline areas downloaded for both. I can see that it says it right there on the map card. So let's go ahead and open Spongy Moth's map card. And I want to point out I am connected to Wi-Fi, and I've done this on purpose. There I am connected because I want to show you that you have, here's an online map. That means that's what I'm seeing because I am connected to Wi-Fi. And here is the map I downloaded on the device. So categorized as on device or online. And if I wanted to, I could go ahead and add an offline area here because I'm connected. I'm not going to. I've prepared ahead and I have the Spongy Moth. Windsor is the name of the central location. This is just how I like to name my areas. If you need to, you can rename your areas so that they make sense to you. So I have Spongy Moth, Windsor is the central location here in Colorado, and street is the level of detail I used. So I'm gonna go ahead and, excuse me, I'm gonna go ahead and open that offline map. Now that I'm in this offline map area, I have a couple signs that I'm in an offline area. Number one, I've got this sync button here, and you want to see this sync icon, the arrow in and out. That means I'm in an offline area. If I am working live, I won't see this icon. So you definitely want to see it. One more thing I want to show you, I'll open it up here. The auto sync should be off or disabled. And if it is enabled, your device is going to be constantly, anytime it gets a Wi-Fi signal, attempting to synchronize your data. And you don't want it doing that where you might end up with a partial or a failed synchronization. You want to make sure that you are, like we mentioned earlier, early in the day and end of day, well connected to a reliable Wi-Fi, doing that on your own terms. So make sure that that is off. Next up, we have, looks like a stack of papers. It's a layers menu, and I'm going to open that up. And this probably looks familiar from our slide earlier. We have the trap sites layer that is enabled. I'm going to enable this map notes points layer as well. You see the difference here? We've got a couple of spots that showed up when I enabled that layer. Let's leave it enabled. So we have a hazard and an information point. And then finally, we can look at a legend, and if we hit this legend button, it will show us what those symbols mean on the map based on which layers are enabled. So I've just enabled on the layers menu these two layers, and it's telling me what these symbols on the map mean. And as you can see, we've got current, and that's so far what we have recorded here, and we have do and we have inactive. So in Spongy Moth, we won't automatically see do happen, but we will overnight have this inactive happen if we record a removal as an activity. So let's say we want to add a trap. In order to add data, we go ahead and hit this add button, which opens up the form, and based again on which layers are enabled, we have some choices. So since we have two layers enabled, we can either add a trap site or a map notes points. Let's add a trap site. So we'll select that, and the data form opens. Our data form has some required fields listed here. You can see those identified with a gray asterisk after them. Not all of them are required, but many are. And it also has some hints. If we scroll down a bit, the surveyor has a little hint. Type in your first and last name, and some defaults. So the agency is a default pulled in. If you need to change that, you go ahead and tap and choose another. I'll say I'm a university cooperator, and I'm going to just fill this out according to Jenny protocol, but you should follow survey protocol. I'm just going to give it some names. The trap type, the lure, as you can see, you've just got a list that you can tap and choose from. The host, you could also go ahead and type that in at the top, and it will find that host for you. The habitat, surveyor, again, first and last name, okay. Install date is a little tricky for me, and it may not be for you, but I'll just let you know what I go through. We are restricted to this year, so if I go back far enough, I won't be able to enter data. I won't be able to enter the date. And what happens to me is I'll sometimes hit the wrong date. If you go ahead and tap today, it will bring you right back to today's date and timestamp. There we are. This is March 2nd. And sometimes I'll scroll and accidentally hit a date. So what I like to do is once I have today in place, tap to close that calendar so I don't end up accidentally tapping something odd there. And site comments is not required, but I'm just going to put test just to be clear. Current status, as you can see, it came in automatically to begin with as current. Is the trap monitored year-round? Also is defaulting to no, and I could change that if I wanted. I'm going to leave it. There are some optional grouped questions as well. So this optional address is a set of questions that is grouped and minimized. To expand it, you can just tap the title, and there you go. Tap it to close it again. We have optional contact information, same thing. Tap and scroll up to see that group of questions. None of these are required. And then quality control report is managed by both GIS and editors, so you won't need to do anything with that. I'm going to move this point away from me just so you can see the point placed, because sometimes right on top of the GPS isn't so great. I'm not getting amazing GPS accuracy, but I am meeting the GPS accuracy. And we saw that with the circle around our crosshairs was blue, and we have some messaging up here at the top that says we're meeting the accuracy. So I've just added that point. I'm going to go to the top, make sure everything looks okay, and hit submit. Great. And what it does then is keeps that point selected, that trap site is selected, and the data form is now in view form, completed and in view form. So if I wanted to return and record an activity, I would want this same view. So I'm going to exit out, and let's select a different trap site for an activity. So I've selected it. You can see it's got a halo, a blue halo around it. The data form is open. I would probably want to look at a unique value, maybe the trap ID, to be sure I've selected the right trap. If needed, you can kind of, scroll, zoom in and out with your fingers to be sure you've got the right trap selected as well. And then we have an option here at the bottom of a link, and that is the link to the activity table. Or I can scroll up a bit till I find Spongy Moth trap activities, and there's that same link, and tap that. And that opens that activities table. And we can see that this trap was monitored last on January 16th, and we're going to add an activity. So in order to add, we're going to tap add. And now we have a little activity form. Same kind of rules here. We have some defaults pulled in. The monitor activity type is the default and USDA APHIS. If we want to change that, I'm going to go ahead and type in my name as required. And then monitor, let's say I am going to replace the lure instead, just change it. Field sample ID, I'm going to say none, I didn't take a sample. Activity date, this follows the same rules as the previous calendar. It's on today, so I'm going to close that up. And activity comments, I'm just going to say test as before. And once again, I'm going to give it a one last look and submit. Perfect. Now in our training map, we do have the ability to delete, but you won't see this garbage pail or the delete option in the official map. You will, however, be able to edit the trap sites. So I'll show you what that looks like again. Let's X out of everything. Same kind of idea as adding an activity. You'll want to select the site itself. Let's go for this guy. That opens the data form. And now we have this pencil option here. So pencil kind of goes right along with edit. If we scroll up, we'll find that option as well, edit. And let's say maybe in this case, the agency should have been state cooperator. So I've made an edit, and now I'll need to submit that edit. So I'm going to go up and hit submit. Now, so you and I have just placed a trap. We've added an activity on that trap, and we've even edited another trap. In the course of that, something changed along the top here with our sync button. Now we have a little dot that's just indicating we have items on our device that need to go out. And in order to do that, we'll just hit this sync icon button. We have all of our pending edits sitting here that you and I have just done together. These 3 actions have happened. And then in order to sync, we just tap sync. Now, I don't want to slow us down with that just in case, but that is what you do. And I'd like to show you the flighted spongy moth form, just so you can see the difference as well quickly. And then I want to show you on the iPad what that looks like. So if I go back, you can see I've got the same thing for flighted spongy moth here with offline areas. I don't want the on device, so I'm going to go ahead and find my offline area. Here is online map and on device, flighted spongy moth. I'm going to open the flighted spongy moth. And this one's got some symbology going on it that might be interesting to you. So once again, we're looking to see that sync button. There it is. As it's loading, it's trying to find my GPS accuracy. I don't expect much in the basement, but I think we'll get there as we talk. Layers. This looks the same as before. And in this one, what I thought I'd go through is I'll just show you what it is, but also let's add a map note point. So I'm going to turn that on and let's look at the legend. Same kind of legend breakdown. And remember, the difference with flighted spongy moth complex is after 14 days, the current trap will become updated to due. And you can see one right here as being symbolized as due. So you can see visually right away in your map, this one is inactive, this one is due, this one is current. So that will help you out a lot in flighted spongy moth complex. Secondly, as I mentioned, the map notes points. There are 2 options there, entering a hazard or info. So let's do that. So with that layer enabled, we can go ahead and tap add. And let's choose to add info. So I'm going to go ahead and choose info. And now we have a little data form here for map notes points. And again, we have required fields listed here, and they're all required in this case. So I'm going to put this, let's see, I'm going to put it over here. And let's just mark a nice place to park. Okay. So this is a school parking lot. Let's say it's the summer and it's empty. I don't know if this is appropriate, but it's just a guess as a sample. I'm going to go ahead and enter my name. I am going to go ahead and say nice parking here as the comment. Obviously, you need a comment because there's no point in just having a symbol on the map that is information. It's not information without your comment. So make your comment informative, possibly more than that. And again, the date that it was entered. Look that over, and we're going to go ahead and submit that point. And that's all there is to it on the map notes points. Another example, I've got a little hazard point here that I selected, and my comments say it's a footbridge with varied water levels and speeds. Lots of bird life under this bridge too. So I don't know if that is appropriate or not, but the ideas maybe abound in your mind now as to how that works. Okay. Finally, I want to show you the difference. Let's stay in that map so you can see the difference. And I'm going to, same thing here with my iPhone, plop that down right on top and open Field Maps. And I have been signed in, so it is doing the same thing. It's kind of pulled me right on into the last map I was looking at. I'm going to go back twice or once till I get to this main map menu, just like the iPad. And I'm seeing something different already. Hopefully you are too. The map titles don't have training in the title. There's no capital training happening. And the thumbnails or the photos here don't say training. And I know that I am in our production portal. So this is where official data would be collected, not training, not play. We don't want to add any data here today. This is not where it belongs. And if I was in doubt, same thing, profile menu, scroll on up and sign out. So I'm not going to add any data, but I want to show you what it looks like. So here we have a Spongy Moth map, but because this one's flighted, let's look at flighted. And I do have an area I downloaded. I have not renamed it yet, but let's open that up. And right away, you can see probably lots of differences. So right away, you see we do have a sync button. That's good. I'm in an offline map. That's what I want to see. I could disconnect from Wi-Fi now and go out in the parking lot and just make sure everything's working great, open it up and see what happens. I have the same layer menu. There's those same layers there. If I want, I can expand this to be the full screen or pull it all the way down or exit. I have the same legend that will show up there only for what's enabled. And this is the only layer enabled right now. If I want to add data, I hit the add button. Same button here, but see the difference in the base map? So our base map here in our training map is this kind of light gray, and the base map or the imagery behind everything on our official data collection map has imagery. So this will be a big kind of telling point. Should I enter official data in this map? Yes. Should I enter official data in this map? No, this is our training map. So that gives you a little hint. Let's add data and see what that looks like. We get the options based on the layers enabled. So we can add a new site, and here's our data form. Now what it does is it does split the screen for you. So it keeps the map visible for you. You have the same GPS accuracy messaging along the top. I can see I'm meeting accuracy. I've got the blue around my area, and I've got the same form. You may want to expand the form or move it down as you need to see the map. And you may have to scroll a lot more on the screen. It's just a smaller screen, but all of the same questions are here and all of the same processes and buttons are here. So you would fill that form out with care and hit submit. I'm not going to do that. Remember, we're in the official map and we're not going to play around in the official map, but that's the difference between those two. So hopefully we have overviewed the Spongy Moth trap sites layer and the activity form. We also logged into an offline map area for flighted Spongy Moth, and that's where we did map notes points, but both of them have that. And so that enabled us to kind of have a look at the trap sites layer. Flighted Spongy Moth complex has a few more questions, and I know you all are used to that, but just follow survey protocol in completing that data form. And the process is the same for map notes points. Some important reminders for you. Remember the difference between signing in to the production portal, the USDA MRP maps, or the staging portal, that USDA, the maps.stg URL. Be very careful that you're entering official data in the official production portal and play data or practice data in a training map. So just make sure you're checking that. Also, really want to harp on this disconnected data collection. Make sure you see that sync button. Make sure that you are doing all of the office prep so that you can succeed at collecting data while not connected to Wi-Fi. And because of that, and because of the automated scripts that are occurring in both of these maps, make sure that you are performing a daily data sync. I highly recommend morning, before you go out, and evening, just to be sure you have the most up-to-date data in your offline map as well. Careful data collection is not meant to be insulting. It's something I have trouble with myself, and I'm always surprised. My recommendation is to give that data form one more look. No matter how much time you took at it, just take one more moment, scan it, and be sure that the answers that you've entered make sense. I can't even tell you how many times I've misspelled my own name. So just a reminder, maybe it's more me than you, but please be sure that you are just giving it that one more look. The map notes layer, remember it's shared. It is meant to be a tool that helps your fellow surveyors out. So if you enter something there, make sure that that's okay to share with them. Conversely, the markup layer, be careful with that, as it is not an official data collection layer. It's just an automated feature, and it lives on your device, so it's very difficult to share. The submit button can fail, and what it will do is message you. We didn't see that fail. What it's looking for is that all the required fields have been completed. So if you miss one of those starred fields, it will fail and it will direct you to enter data into that field. It also can fail if you're not meeting GPS requirements. Being in my basement, you can see that it's pretty forgiving. And when you're out in the field, you should have even more success. So if the submit button fails, it's either a missed field that is required or a GPS issue. That was quite a bit, and that was quite a bit and really a quick overview for some of you who may have been beginners, but there's a lot more help out there for you. We've mentioned him before, but Anthony Man-Son-Hing is your National Operations Manager. So anything regarding the program itself, protocol, questions on how to enter data should be directed to Anthony. He's very responsive. iPad issues should also include iPhone issues. Our devices are supported by CECIT. If you're having trouble, open a ticket and get them to support you right away. Portal access, what I'm referring to is having access to these maps in order to collect data, or having a role that allows you to collect data, anything related to accessing this, or even the Field Maps application. We kind of got an order here. Obviously, you should always go to your supervisor first. They're there for you as your direct supervisor. Your first contact should be your supervisor. They might also go to the field GIS specialist who supports your area, and or they may email this webgis.connect@usda.gov in order to get more brains on something. And you know, it's hard to predict what might go awry or just may not work as expected, but there are avenues for you to reach out for more help. And then finally, all things EUTG stands for End User Tools Group, which is my group. Anything that's training related, really start with this webpage. And this is probably a good time to put those links in our chat one more time for everyone. But make sure that you check out the Mobile Data Collection Tools webpage and, of course, any of us for that kind of support. So what we discussed today, we really dug in a little bit into the Field Maps app, especially as it pertained to signing in, either to the official or training maps. We really hit staying on the path with the disconnected workflow. Please don't take desire paths, even though they might look good and really desirable. We walked through layers involved in Spongy Moth and Flighted Spongy Moth complex, and we experienced the data form together. So we were together able to place a trap, record an activity, edit a trap site, and we were able to also look at the map notes points layer and add an information point there. And we went through a bunch of reminders. I know that that is a lot of information, and I've given you some of that as hints along the way, but I'd say this is probably a good point to just remind you to test yourself, use that quiz, take a moment while this is fresh and kind of help cement it in your brain how these two maps work. So just a reminder to take that quiz. And finally, that even though I've given you lots of folks to go to, please know that you can come to me at any time with questions, or anyone on my team. We're here to help and support, and we really want you to feel comfortable and find success collecting data for both Spongy Moth and Flighted Spongy Moth complex. If there are any questions at this point and you would like, or if there's something that I maybe went too quickly through, or that you would like to see done again, please feel free. If you feel comfortable, you can type that in the chat, and I'm happy to do that. Oh, I see Vladimir. Okay, this is a great one in the chat. Will you please show the ArcGIS Field Maps video gallery on our site? So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think what you want is on the Mobile Data Collection Tools website. This is our main page here. So if we scroll to the bottom of that page, we have a video gallery. Let's start with foundations. How about that? So foundations is the category that these field maps videos have been placed in, and you can see them in a row. There's an introduction, installing, signing in, which we kind of looked at briefly today, that disconnected workflow, download a map area. This is a biggie. Probably everyone could use that again. collecting data, markup and measure, editing, daily data sync, and then finally a conclusion that brings it all together. So that's 10 videos. And I think they're just a little over an hour if you did them all in a row, but you don't have to. Okay, good, Vlad. That's what you're looking for. It's also found, it's actually saved. I'll give you that direct link if it helps you, as a playlist on YouTube. So I'm going to put that in the chat too, just to be handy. So you know how YouTube works. If you want to play all, it'll just play them in a row, or you can select them here. So your best bet really is to go to our mobile data collection tools page, and you'll find so many things there. But I highly recommend, even if you have some experience using field maps, which was new to us all last year, just take another look, especially at some of these key ones. For instance, the disconnected workflow and downloading a map area. Those two, and the daily data sync. I'd say those are the three top ones that give some of us trouble, and they're not tricky once you get them down, but they can be. So just do me a favor and give them another review. Anything else? Did I miss anybody else's questions or interest? All right, then what I'm going to do is go back to this page for getting help, so you have that to end on. And just thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And so many of you were very early and ready to go. So I appreciate your participation. I wish you luck out there and have a good rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.